whether or not you've ever thought about yourself as a creative person, you're different from non-creative people. And there are actual biological reasons for that, which we'll talk about in a minute. Some people aren't comfortable with it. Maybe they were raised in an environment where it wasn't considered okay to be creative. Maybe there were negative terms used like kooky dooky or artsy fartsy. Maybe they thought you had to look like this guy. But actually, creative people are across the fields, and they're the ones who are making names for themselves and forging ahead in the world. Mathematicians, entrepreneurs, musicians, academics, architects, educational pioneers, and of course, our writers. This is Marianne Scott. She's one of the One Lit Place writers. She's on her third novel and is unstoppable. Carrie Ann Long is a One Lit Place writer. She is on her second novel, recently published with HarperCollins in Canada and soon Norton in the United States. Whether or not you would consider yourself a creative person, you certainly are a curious person. You would not be sitting through this course if you were incurious. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote the very successful memoir Eat, Pray, Love, says all creativity begins with curiosity. Now, the biology of a creative person, as I said, is different from a non-creative person. And there were studies done on creative people to determine exactly how we worked. One of the earlier important studies done on creative people was in the 60s. A researcher named Frank Barron, he was a psychologist specializing in creativity, brought together a number of different creative people. And these are people who were creative across the fields: academics, architects, mathematicians, scientists, and of course some writers. And he stuck everyone together on the UC Berkeley campus in California for about 4 days and studied them. And what he found was that all of the people he studied bore the same traits. They shared these in common. They were introspective, comfortable with complexity and ambiguity. They didn't need pat answers. They had a high tolerance for disorder and disarray. They could extract order from chaos. They were independent, unconventional, had no problem taking risks, or if they had a problem with it, they did it anyway. And they were grounded and self-aware. So some people have been of the belief that there's a right brain, which is the creative side, and a left brain, which is the analytical side. But actually, what has been found is that the creative brain fires all across the entire brain. So if you look at this fMRI, you'll see that this brain is in the throes of being creative, and it's firing across all the different surfaces of the brain in 3 different lobes: frontal, parietal, and temporal. And scientists call this the default mode network or an imagination network. And apparently we spend half of our lives firing off across all cylinders. Interestingly, anytime we look like we're out to lunch or half asleep or daydreaming, we're busy being creative. So the 3 main components of that brain create links to personal meaning making, mental stimulation, and perspective taking. So the writer, the seed of any writer, starts with these links being formed. We construct meaning from our experiences. We remember the past and think about the future. We imagine other people's perspectives and alternative scenarios. That's where storytelling and the imagination comes in. We certainly understand stories as they're told to us, or we bring them in, and we reflect on mental and emotional states, both our own and others. And that's where empathy comes in. And writers are known for being empathetic, which is how we are able to get into the hearts and minds of our characters. And children in particular respond to stories by developing that very important skill of empathy. And so many research studies have come out over the years showing how vital it is that children read books. In short, creative people, we can't help ourselves. We're amazing. We're deep thinkers, we're empathetic, we're curious, and we're complicated.